First of all, I want to say how honoured I feel to be giving this Hufeland-Lecture, and how sad I am not to be there with you all. It might seem strange at first for a chimpanzee lady, as I'm often known as, to be addressing a group of family doctors, but actually it's not so strange. My Uncle Eric was a surgeon. He ended up senior consultant surgeon at a big London hospital. And when I was just 16, he let me come into the operating theatre and watch some of his operations. He resuscitated a heart, he did stomach operations, and he fixed a broken hip. I learned all about that. And my aunt, his sister, she was one of the first child physiotherapists in England. And for a while, I worked at her clinic, learning all about the diseases so prevalent then, rickets and polio and club feet and so on. And when we first got to Gombe National Park, where I did the chimpanzee study, I was with my mother because the authorities, British back then, wouldn't let me go on my own. And she came for 4 months, and she set up a clinic with simple medications given her by her brother, and aspirins and Band-Aids and saline drips and Epsom salts, all those old-fashioned things that maybe some of you will remember. And she got a real reputation among the local fishermen, set up a good relationship for me with them right from the beginning. So anyway, the theme that I want to talk about throughout this lecture is One Health. And that's the understanding that human health, the health of the environment, and the health of animals is all intertwined, all linked. And you cannot have healthy humans without a healthy planet and healthy animals. The thing is that we are part of the natural world, not separated from it. And we depend on it for clean air, clean water, for all the things we call ecosystem services. But what we depend on is healthy ecosystems. And the forest ecosystem that I came to know best at Gombe, I realized how every species has a role to play in that complex interweaving of plant and animal. And I like to think of it as a tapestry of life. And every time a species goes extinct, it's as though a thread is pulled from that tapestry. And if enough threads are pulled, then the ecosystem will collapse. And we are in the middle of the 6th great extinction. So the planet is sick. And it's sick as a result of human activities. And just like a human patient, it needs urgent attention. This time it needs urgent attention from everyone and not just a doctor. We're destroying forests. We're polluting the ocean. We're polluting air, water, and land. Fossil fuels are being burned, releasing huge amounts of carbon dioxide, CO2, into the atmosphere, one of the main so-called greenhouse gases that circle the planet and trap the heat of the sun, leading to global warming and climate change. Some of the bad things we're doing, and I won't list them all, I'm sure you know, but there's our industrial agriculture with its emphasis on monocultures and unacceptable amounts of chemical pesticides and herbicides and fertilizers. We shouldn't be using those at all. And it's killing the soil and it's harming biodiversity. Animal agriculture, intensive animal agriculture, the factory farms we call them, not only cruel, but terribly harmful to the environment because billions of animals are trapped in these factory farms and they will have to be fed. And so huge areas of habitat are destroyed to grow the grain to feed them. Fossil fuel is used to get the grain to the animals to the abattoir, and the meat to the table. And a lot of water is used, and that's increasingly scarce in some places. to turn vegetable to animal protein. And it's also affecting human health. We find there is runoff from industrial, agricultural, and household waste, so that in the rains this is washed into the rivers and ends up polluting the ocean. It also seeps into the ground, affecting the groundwater. It's this disrespect of nature which has led to climate change and loss of biodiversity. The bad hurricanes and other storms are more frequent. Floods, droughts, terrible fires are everywhere. Ice is melting, sea levels are warming, sea levels are rising as the water warms and as the ice melts. And already, in some places, the environment has become uninhabitable due to extended droughts. And we get climate refugees pouring away from countries where they can no longer survive. And now we have this pandemic, and that too is caused by our disrespect of environment and animals. We brought this pandemic on ourselves to a large extent by our absolute disrespect of nature and animals. We destroy habitats. We crowd animals sometimes into closer contact with humans. We hunt them and kill them. We capture them and send them alive through animal trafficking around the world to sell in wildlife markets as meat, as medicine, and sometimes to sell as exotic pets. They take their viruses with them, viruses they may have lived in harmony with for hundreds and hundreds of years. But if a virus gets the opportunity to jump from an animal to a person, it may cause a new so-called zoonotic disease like COVID-19. And the factory farms are also hotbeds for creating new zoonotic diseases. Let me pause here for a moment to reflect on the true nature of these animals I'm talking about. And to do that, let me go back to 1960, when I arrived in the Gombe National Park to start the long-term study of chimpanzees that is continuing to this day. Chimpanzees are our closest living relatives. We share 98.6% of the composition of our DNA with them. But there's also these amazing similarities in behavior. Communication, they kiss, embrace, hold hands, pat one another. They swagger, they shake their fist. They use objects as tools. They use rocks as weapons. When male chimpanzees are competing for dominance, they stand upright, they swagger, they adopt a ferocious scowl. They look as big and dangerous as they possibly can to intimidate each other, reminding me of some human politicians. Chimpanzee mothers, good ones and bad ones. The good ones are supportive like my mother was. She was the only one who told me that I could manage to do what I dreamed of when I was 10, which was to go to Africa, live with wild animals and write books about them. Everybody else laughed, but she said, well, Jane, if you work really hard and take advantage of every opportunity, and if you don't give up, maybe you'll find a way. And so we now know, looking back over 60 years, we've just celebrated our 60th anniversary of the research at Gombe, that the offspring of the supportive mothers, they do better. The males reach a higher rank, sire more infants, the females are better mothers. Chimpanzees use the same medicinal plants in many cases as the surrounding local communities, and they pass this information on, along with tool-using behaviors, to their infants, who learn by observation, imitation, and practice, so that chimpanzees have a primitive culture. It was devastating to me to find they also have a dark and brutal side to their nature. They're very territorial. They will chase and try to kill individuals from a neighboring community. But they also have a caring and compassionate and altruistic side, just like us. So it's very clear, isn't it? isn't a sharp line dividing us from them. Yet, after I'd been with the chimpanzees for 1.5 years, my mentor, Louis Leakey, told me I needed to get a degree to be taken seriously by other scientists. I hadn't even been to college. He got me a place to do a PhD in Cambridge University. No time for a BA, he said. I was nervous. I'd get there. I'm told I've done everything wrong. You shouldn't have given the chimpanzees names. No David Greybeard, Flo, Mike, Mr. McGregor, and all the rest. They should have numbers. That's scientific. You can't talk about them having personalities, minds capable of decision-making. It's certainly not emotions, like happiness, sadness, fear, despair, grief, and so on. Well, why? Because those were considered unique to humans. In fact, I was taught there was a difference in kind between us and all the rest of the animals. But fortunately, I had a wonderful teacher when I was a child who had taught me that in this respect, the professors were all wrong. And that was my wonderful dog, Rusty. And you can't share your life in a meaningful way with an animal and not realize that we're not the only beings on this planet with personalities, minds, and emotions. We're part of and not separated from the rest of the animal kingdom. So then when we think about the animals in the factory farms, the animals being crowded and sold in wildlife markets, the animals being used to test for vaccines, for example, hundreds and thousands of animals, all individual beings, all with personalities, all sentient, capable of knowing fear and pain. The scale of suffering is almost unimaginable. There's a silver lining to this pandemic, and that's that I believe more people understand the need for a new relationship with nature. It's a crazy idea that there can be unlimited global economic development on a planet with finite natural resources and a growing human population. Well, there are over 7 billion of us today, and it's predicted it'll be closer to 10 billion by 2050. So if we carry on with business as usual, seeking short-term gain over the protection of the environment, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to our poor old sick patient, Mother Earth? So what must we do? We must reduce the unsustainable lifestyle of the wealthy around the world. We must alleviate poverty, because when you're really poor, you destroy the environment to get more land to grow crops to feed your family or to make money from charcoal. If you're in an urban area, you buy the cheapest food. You can't afford to say, where did it come from? How was it made? Did it harm the environment? Was it cruel to animals? Is it cheap because of unfair wages or sweatshops in another country? You have to buy the cheapest in order to survive. So the Jane Goodall Institute, we're doing our little best. And in 1994, I began our Take Care Utukari program, having realized that the hills around Gombe that used to be forested had been laid bare because too many people were living there for the land to support, too poor to buy food from elsewhere, struggling to survive. And so it hit me, if we don't help them find ways of living without destroying the environment, then we can't save chimpanzees, forests, or anything else. And so this Takari program relies on working hand in glove with local communities. That's the only way you can sustain a conservation program. And we started off in the 12 villages around Gombe, as they asked, restoring fertility to the overused farmland so they could grow more food, working with Tanzanian authorities to improve health and education facilities. We developed an extremely holistic program. As they came to trust us, we were able to introduce water management programs. We provided as many scholarships for girls as we could, as it's known that around the world, as women's education rises, family size tends to drop. And we provide family planning information because these people want to educate their children. They see it as a way out of poverty, and they can't afford to educate the 8 to 10 children they used to have. And as the health facilities improve, they are more confident that the babies they do have will live beyond the first 2 years. We've also introduced microcredit opportunities, particularly for women, and they can take out small loans to start their own small, environmentally sustainable businesses. And when they pay the money back, and nearly all of it has been paid back, they can take out another loan if they so wish. They're proud, it's theirs, they've done it by their own hard work. We've introduced cutting-edge technology, so GIS, GPS, satellite imagery helps the villagers to plan their land use. And from the various villages, we train volunteers to monitor the health of their own village forest reserves. And almost every village in this area has its forest reserve, where almost all of Tanzania's remaining chimpanzees live, unprotected. We're now in 104 villages with our Takari program. That's throughout the range of the chimpanzees in Tanzania. And the people have understood that protecting the environment isn't just for wildlife, it's for their own future, the health of their children. And they become our partners in conservation. And this program is in 6 other African countries around areas where we're working to study and protect the chimpanzees. It's a program that gives hope. And if we lose hope, we lose everything. Because if you don't hope that the actions you take are going to make a difference, why bother? Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we die. And so I've got various reasons for hope. It's my task in life is to give people hope. And there is hope. The people struggling to make a vaccine for this pandemic, they've managed to get together very often to provide vaccines for countries too poor to buy and not skilled enough to make their own. I started a program in 1991 for young people because they seemed to be losing hope. They were either apathetic, didn't seem to care, or they were angry, or they were depressed. And when I talked to them, they said, well, you've compromised our future and there's nothing we can do about it. We have been stealing their future. We're still stealing it as we destroy the environment. We're destroying the services that nature provides to keep us healthy. So Roots and Shoots, which began in Tanzania with 12 high school students, has one main message. Every individual, that means all of us, every single day we live, we make some impact on the planet, and we get to choose what sort of impact we make. Roots and Shoots groups choose themselves projects to make the world better for people, for animals, for the environment, because everything is interrelated. And today we have members from preschool through university and everything in between in over 60 countries around the world, hundreds and thousands of young people, and all what I call the alumni, those who've been through the program and take their values with them. Their values being respect for Mother Nature, respect for animals, respect for each other. Then Takari gives me great reason for hope. It is lifting people out of poverty. Women are beginning to have fewer children. And then there's nature's amazing resilience. If we give Mother Nature time, areas that we've totally destroyed can once again support nature, and biodiversity can return. If you fly over Gombe today, you won't see those bare hills. The trees have come back. Not the forests they originally were, but supporting a good deal of biodiversity and providing the people with the eco-services that they need. And there are many places around the world, including in Germany, where places we've utterly destroyed can once again support life. Animals on the brink of extinction can be given another chance. I wrote a whole book about it. And then the young people are my greatest reason for hope, because once they understand the problem and we empower them to take action, they are changing the world as I speak. They're so determined, they're so passionate, and they're so sure of success that, as I say, they are changing the world. And then there are the amazing projects that I meet as I used to travel 300 days a year around the world. And amazing projects, amazing people, tackling what seems to be impossible, not giving up, and either succeeding or inspiring others to follow in their footsteps. We're beginning to understand the importance of a connection with the natural world. And we don't want to connect with a sick world. We want a healthy world. And people are beginning to understand the importance of bringing nature into the cities, into the schoolrooms, urban greening, planting trees. It's been shown that if you green an area of high crime in a city, that the crime levels drop. It's been proven that mental and physical health improve as you bring greenness into people's lives. And this is something really, really important, that we re-establish a connection with the natural world, particularly in children. And here, I think every school should have environmental education, and particularly for the youngest children, outdoor education, hands-on learning from nature, so that they get to understand the beauty of the natural world that still surrounds us. I want to end this wonderful occasion with a very special video. I'm sure some of you have seen it, but it sort of takes us back to where I began. And it concerns a chimpanzee called Wunda. In Africa, many chimpanzees are killed for the illegal bushmeat trade. That's the commercial hunting of wild animals for food. And because mothers are very often shot and they have infants who are too small to be worth selling for food, there are all these orphaned babies. You can't just put them back in the forest. Governments can confiscate them, but what are they going to do with them? So there are now sanctuaries for orphan chimps in different parts of Africa, and JGI runs 2, including the largest, which supports over 160 individuals in the Republic of Congo. This is about a chimpanzee called Wunda. She came to us as an infant, wounded by the bullet that killed her mother. Thanks to our wonderful veterinarian, Rebecca Atencia, she recovered. Then when she was about 8 or 9 years old, she got really, really sick. And again, Rebecca saved her life. She was one of the candidates for release onto one of the islands given to us by the government. And what I want to stress before you watch this video is that I only met Wunda, which, by the way, in the native language means close to death. That I only met her that day that she was released. And I was with her on the boat, but I hadn't met her before. So that what happened was one of the most extraordinary things. It's a moment that I will never forget. And as you watch it, try and imagine what it was like when this totally unexpected behavior took place. And I wanted to end with this because it really illustrates a lot of what I've been saying about the sentience of non-human beings. So enjoy this video. This is a really exciting moment for me. The Jane Goodall Institute's Chimpunga Chimpanzee Rehabilitation Center in the Republic of Congo has for years been caring for infants whose mothers were killed, mostly for the illegal bushmeat trade. Many of them are now fully grown. Recently, we acquired 3 large forested islands on the beautiful Kwilu River, where we can release many of the chimpanzees from our overcrowded center. In here is Wunda, and she nearly died, but thanks to Rebecca, she came back from the dead. And here she is about to come out into this paradise. She's the 15th chimpanzee to get her freedom here. And we hope ultimately to have about 60 on the island. Today is the first time I've met Wunda. I talked to her on the boat, trying to reassure her. She must have wondered what was happening. None of us could predict exactly what she would do once the cage door opened. It was a very, very touching moment. One of the most amazing things that's ever happened to me. The warmth of her embrace is something I shall never forget. For Wunda and all the other chimpanzees we're working to bring here, Chinzula Island will provide a wonderful forest home where they will be cared for and safe. That's not quite the end of the story. All our chimpanzee females in the sanctuary are on birth control because we just don't have room for any more. We're still getting babies coming in from the bushmeat trade, although far fewer than before. But over the years, just 3 of the chimpanzee females, the implant went wrong, and one of them was Wunda. So Wunda, 4 years ago, she gave birth on the island, and now she and her baby, who's now 4 years old, we called him Hope, and she is the dominant female on this island, and maybe, just maybe, she'll be a candidate for release into the real wild if we can find the right place. So that's the message I have for you. You're all family doctors. Your work is to cure people, but it's interrelated with the health of Mother Nature. Without a healthy environment, without healthy ecosystems, human health will suffer. And so let's get together, all of us, and work to heal Mother Nature so that she can perform her amazing work of healing us. Thank you.